กสวยๆเยอะเลยเดี๋ยวจะถ่ายเก็บภาพบรรยากาศให้ชมนะคะเราก็มาอยู่ตรงโรงหนังที่ชิคาโกนะคะที่เขาชอบมาถ่ายรูปกัน The Express of Soul นะตึกแถวนี้ก็บรรยากาศดีนะคะคนก็เยอะนะตรงนี้
My name is Philip.
วันนี้ก็คนไม่ค่อยเยอะนะดูแลนด์มาร์คมาเที่ยวชิคาโกคนพามาเดินด้วยก็จะเหนื่อยหน่อยจะมีตึกแบบสวยสูงแล้วก็แบบสไตล์แบบวินเทจโมเดิร์นนะคะสวยมากก็จะมีพวกร้านค้าร้านช้อปปิ้งอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแบบตลอดทางเลยนะจะมาดูสวนสาธารณะนะคะ สวยมากที่นี่ก็จะมีแลนด์มาร์คเป็นแบบรูปถั่วนะชื่อบีนเห็นละคนก็จะมาถ่ายรูปตรงนี้นะมีนกด้วยวันนี้เราก็มาเที่ยวกัน1 วันที่ชิคาโกนะคะอากาศตอนนี้ก็ร้อนหน่อยๆนะนี่คนเยอะมาก
This is for like concerts and stuff.
Can walk go look inside over there. ที่นี่ก็บรรยากาศแบบสวยมากวันนี้แดดอ่อนๆนะไม่ร้อนจะมาเดินมาดูกันจะถ่ายรูปจากอีกมุมนึงก็จะเป็นที่นักท่องเที่ยวห้ามพลาดเลยนะมาเที่ยวที่ชิคาโกวันนี้มาเที่ยวกันก็จะเป็นวันพฤหัสนะคะแต่คนก็นักท่องเที่ยวก็เริ่มเยอะแล้วนะแบบเห็นแบบคนมาถ่ายรูปเยอะเลยนะมีแบบจากแบบทั่วโลกเลยนะนักท่องเที่ยวมาที่นี่บรรยากาศที่นี่มันก็จะประมาณแบบวิวเมืองเดี๋ยวเราจะไปถ่ายแบบรอบๆแถวนี้ให้ดู วันนี้ก็อยู่ที่บีนนะคะ เข้ามาชมวิดีโอก็กดแชร์กดไลค์เป็นกำลังใจให้ก่อนนะคะพาไปเที่ยวกันนะ วันนี้ก็หลังจากที่นี่ก็จะพาไปเที่ยวรอบๆนะมีแบบที่เที่ยวที่เขาบอกว่าแบบเดินแบบใกล้ๆแถวนี้เยอะเลยนะ เดินแบบไม่ไกลเลยลองไปเดินดูกันนะ มีแบบดอกทิวลิปด้วยสวยมากก็ว่าเด็กจะเดินลงไปทางนี้ ที่เที่ยวก็จะเดินแบบติดต่อกันเลยนะคะคนก็มาแบบถ่ายรูป Nice.
You know, Wrigley Gum. That white building has the world headquarters. Wrigley Gum.
But
Cross.
ตรงตึกนี้ก็จะมีแบบแม่น้ำนะคนชอบมาถ่ายรูปตรงนี้
Want to take photos here?
ชัวร์ตรงนี้ก็จะมีคนมานั่งเรือทัวร์นะเรือสวยมากตอนนี้ก็กำลังจะไปนั่งเรือนะเอ็ดซิงก็มารอขึ้นเรือตรงนี้นะบรรยากาศรอเรือมาไม่กี่นาทีนะน้ำแบบสีเขียวสวยมากก็จะมีแบบคนขึ้นเรือเยอะมากนะคะต่อแถวแบบเรือมาตลอดเลย
That comes out back.
ตอนนี้ก็มารอขึ้นเรือนะคะต้องจองมาก่อนคนละ 1,500 บาทนะก็จะได้ไปขึ้นเรือเวลาที่ขึ้นเรือก็จะประมาณ1 ชั่วโมงครึ่ง
Okay. Take a Coke.
Beautiful because up here it's sunny, it's breezy, it feels fantastic. The water's out.
I worked here. If you don't know anything about architecture, it's all pretty to look at and it's interesting to learn about. And we'll talk about some Chicago history as well. That's where Chicago began about 240 years ago. So remember Ferrari. Directly to our right is the Trump International Hotel and Tower. It was finished in 2009. It was finished in 1973, designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and it is international style. International style architecture is defined with dark steel, rectangular patterns, and minimal ornamentation. Now, international style was pioneered by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and he was a professor right here in Chicago. You see, his philosophy was that architects should be as practical as possible, or rather, buildings should be as practical as possible for the people
That's where I
inside them.
had dinner when
Now,
I stayed
Mies
down
van der
here.
Rohe was a professor,
Right there, Lewinsky.
but not all of his students ended up liking rectangles. Directly to our right, these two circular towers to our right are Marina City. Marina City is by Bertrand Goldberg. These two circular towers we're passing. Goldberg was inspired by nature. He said there are no right angles in nature. He wanted to build round and natural-looking shapes. In addition, you might have noticed those parking ramps. We'll get to see them again behind us in a moment. Here's the thing. When Marina City went up in the 60s, not many people lived in downtown Chicago. So you can see those parking ramps behind us again there, those winding spiral parking ramps. In order to entice residents to move downtown, Goldberg, it had its own grocery store, movie theater, bowling alley, skating rink, marina, and those parking ramps. Having seen the winding spiral parking ramps of Marina City, you might have gotten nervous imagining cars falling off and into the river. Don't worry, that's only happened twice. That's true, but the whole truth is that it never happened on accident. Both times were stunts. Once for Steve McQueen's movie The Hunter, and the other was for an auto insurance commercial. Now, directly to our right, this brick building is from 1914. This red brick building is the Reed Murdoch Center. It was designed by George Nimitz to be a grocery warehouse back when the river was our port. Ships would come in from Lake Michigan and dock at warehouses like that to load and unload goods. Now, it's a mixed-use office building today, but it remains a window into the river's more industrial path. The weather's clear today, so I think we'll be able to spot it. If you look a bit forward and up to the right, closely, you might be able to make out that there's actually a stone building here. Exactly. Extra large and in charge on the right side of our boat. This is the Merchandise Mart. The Merch Mart was finished in 1932, designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White in Art Deco style. Art Deco style is defined with vertical lines, setbacks toward the top, and geometric ornamentation throughout. Now, the Merchandise Mart was the largest building in the world in 1932, 4.2 million square feet, 400,000 square meters of floor space. It was bankrolled by Marshall Field of Marshall Field's department stores to consolidate as many. Finally, up till 2008, the U.S. Postal Service gave it its own zip code. That was 60654. Now, directly to our right, these two glass towers are both by Pelly Clark Pelly Architects. The one on the right is residential, and the one on the left is the new Salesforce Tower, all office space and still under construction internally. It should be completed later this year. Now, if we take a break from looking up and we just look around here, right here is where the three branches of the Chicago River meet. The north branch is to our right, the south branch is to our left, and the main branches of the river meet is called Wolf Point. And long ago, it's where Chicago got its good view of that. When French explorers first arrived here in the late 17th century, the native Potawatomi referred to this area as Chicago. The Frenchmen adopted it and that became Chicago, but the Frenchmen never knew what Chicago meant. It translated to the place of bad smells. That's because of the natural terrain at that time. This area was a low-lying forested swamp, and in that swamp grew the United States had gained a more substantial hold on the land and built Fort Dearborn. Fort Dearborn was a wooden military outpost built right across the river from DuSable's trading post in that marshland. And being the U.S. government's first presence here, Fort Dearborn is represented by a piece of a symbol of Chicago. You may have noticed the flag of Chicago. We are not exactly subtle about it. It's a white flag with 2 blue horizontal stripes and 4 red stars in a horizontal row. The 2 blue stripes represent the Chicago River and Lake Michigan. All right, so it is time for me to continue. And I think I'm going to talk about exactly what most of you want me to talk about, directly to our right. Directly to our right, there is a glass building with an alarmingly narrow base. This is 150 North Riverside Plaza. It's by Getz Partners from 2017, and here's how it stays upright. These diagonal steel beams above us focus its weight to its central core, and inside the top of the tower, I have a relentless tickle in my throat. Anyway, inside the top of the tower, there are 150,000 gallons or 400,000 liters of water in a mass damper system. When wind blows against the building, water in tanks on tracks is shifted against the blow of the wind to balance it out. Now, it would stay upright without the mass damper, but it prevents it from swaying nauseatingly on windy days, and actually mass dampers are quite common. A lot of skyscrapers have shiftable weight near their tops. Now let's bounce to our left. Directly to our left, this glass tower is Bank of America Towers from 2021. These shiny diagonal supports along the river are meant to remind you of the diagonal undersides of 150 North Riverside, right behind us that we just mentioned. These two glass towers are both by Getz Partners, meant to be unified in style with these diagonal elements they share along the river. We're going to stick to our left. On the left side of the boat in the direction of travel, this is one of my favorites. This is the Civic Opera Building. The Civic Opera Building is from 1928 by Graham Anderson Probst and White Architects. It is home of the second largest opera auditorium in the United States, 3,500 seats behind this big wall labeled for your convenience. The building as a whole is Art Deco style, vertical lines, setbacks toward the top, and the whole thing resembles a giant throne. It has two armrests and a backrest, and the seat faces west. People have theorized that 20th century railroad magnate Mr. Samuel Insull, who bankrolled its construction and lived in the penthouse at the top for a year until he went bankrupt, wanted the Opera House to be a throne overlooking his railway business empire in the western United States. Maybe. But the truth is, Graham Anderson, Probst and White probably designed those narrow sections independently of him for a practical reason: cross ventilation. Letting the breeze easily cross through the windows was very important before air conditioning was common. Now, let's bounce to our right. On the right side of the boat, below street level, we have the train shed at Chicago Union Station. Right here at eye level is this Metra train in the distance to our right. Metra is our commuter rail system that thousands of Chicagolanders use every day to get between the city and the suburbs. In addition, Chicago Union Station is Amtrak's third busiest station in the United States overall. You can see some people getting on the Metra train to our right there. Now, Chicago Union Station, this is the train shed where the platforms are, where passengers get on and off it. All of these is River City. It's from 1986 by Bertrand Goldberg. Goldberg, as we mentioned before, liked these round in his thesis, and dozens of trains a day still go over it. Now, this one is raised the most often because it sits lower than the other bridges in town, but we also still lift the other drawbridges that we've gone under today. We typically lift all the drawbridges on the main branch and south branches of the river on Wednesdays and Saturdays in spring and fall. In fact, this coming Saturday, if you're still going to be in town, this Saturday should be another one. Is defined with having an ornate base, a stack of floors, and an ornate French Beaux-Arts style. Now, the Wrigley Building was, of course, originally the home of the Wrigley Company of chewing gum fame, which is still headquartered in Chicago, but no longer in that historic building. And the Wrigley Building is clad with over 300,000 white glazed terracotta tiles. Terracotta is very common and important in Chicago because in the early 1900s, it was cheap to acquire, yet easy to carve into ornate decoration. If you look to our right, and way up high in the background, there is that tall, white, rectangular building, that tall, white, perfect rectangle of a building way up high in the sky directly to our right. That's the Aon Center. The Aon Center was originally the Standard Oil building, built in 1973, designed by Edward Durrell Stone. It was the tallest building in Chicago for 1 year. It's the 4th tallest building in the city today. And Edward Durrell Stone originally clad it entirely with imported Italian Carrara marble. Expensive stuff. It made the whole thing glisten beautifully in the sunlight. But after 9 years, those plates of marble, 3/4 of an inch thick, started to crack and fall to the sidewalk below. The city made the architecture firm reclad it in a sturdier stone, and what we saw today is Carolina granite. Now the process of replacing the Carrara marble with the Carolina granite cost Edward Durrell Stone's firm $80 million. That was half what it cost to build it in the first place. It was an expensive mistake that goes to show never take marble for granted. Now here's the thing, that's all true. It's all true. I can admit that my delivery on the joke is sometimes a bit rocky, but it's important to me that you understand that my boss hates that joke. Takes real stones to tell it. Now, in front of us and up to the right, there is a very tall blue glass chapel with a bit of a wiggly shape. That's the St. Regis Chicago. St. Regis Chicago. The St. Regis was finished in 2020. It is 1,200 feet or 365 meters tall. It's currently the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, and it's currently the tallest building to make it someone else's problem. Instead of solving the issue, we made the issue flow away from for our feet of engineering as we were for ourselves. The states of Indiana, Michigan. Well, I guess I got a little behind, and that was a very good. Finish up those drinks before we get back to the top. Okay. Directly to our right, this curvy, dark steel Lake Point Tower was finished in 1968, designed by Schipperite and Heinrich architects. It is curvilinear international style. It was the tallest residential building in the world when finished, and it's a little lonely. It's the only privately owned building on the east side of Lakeshore Drive. That's because right along the riverfront is a row of individual townhomes, each with its own entrance from the Riverwalk. Each is 4 stories tall, and each has a private elevator to its private rooftop terrace. You know, they do sound nice. It is a top secret formula, and the way they do it, they sail a couple boats up and down the main branch of the river. They throw the dye, with it, accompanied by drummers and bagpipers. It dyes the whole main branch of the river bright green for about a day, and the dye is left to flow downstream and disperse over the next. That is the London House Hotel. The London House is from 1923 by Alfred Alschuler. It is arts defined with having an ornate base, a stack of floors, and an ornate top to match the base. Now, it also has all those columns on the facade, on the top and the bottom. Those are Corinthian-style columns. Corinthian-style columns have an ornate base, a simple shaft, and an ornate top to match the base. It was Corinthian-style columns that inspired Fresco's art-style architecture as a movement. And remember that the London House Hotel stands on the location where in 1803 Fort Dearborn was built, as the U.S. government's first presence in this area, right across the river, the banks of the river in that forested marsh on the shores of Lake Michigan from DuSable's trading post from 1780. Those 2 wooden structures as the beginnings of Chicago 240 years ago. Now, folks, we are approaching our dock, but before we get there, I want to...
พอเที่ยวนั่งเรือเสร็จนะคะ ตอนนี้กำลังจะไปที่ชิคาโกที่ไชน่าทาวน์นะ ไปหาแบบของกินอร่อยๆกันนะ ตอนนี้เรือก็มาจอดที่เราขึ้นนะคะ ตรงตึกทรัมป์นะ แล้วก็คนก็รอลงเรืออยู่นะ ใช้เวลาก็ประมาณ90 นาทีนะ คนแบบเยอะเต็มลำเลย ก็ถือว่าถ้าใครมาเที่ยวที่ชิคาโกเป็นกิจกรรมที่แบบห้ามพลาดนะคะ คนละประมาณ1,500